pretty quick, or it's going to be a little bit. Of course, if you're watching this after the fact, I'm talking to no one right now, except for you. Let's see who all pops on. But we are doing a little bit of foraging tonight, and we're going to be talking about some projects and the next YouTube Knife Makers Challenge. Kind of what I hope it's going to be, kind of my plans for that while I'm doing the little project today, prepping for tomorrow. Let's see what's up popping on here. Got a couple of people. Hello, a couple of people. What's up, Jason? So, with this this little live, I've got a little bit of foraging that I got to do, so I figured I'd go ahead and do it while we're talking. I got the forge lit. It's what's up, Pinto? What's up, Bob? What's up, Jim? So, at the forge lit, it's quite a bit quieter because I now have, they're just temporary, but I have doors, so the forge is actually outside the shop now. And I've got my fan down here blowing cool air in and hot air out. It's real nice having this out here because inside the shop it's nice and cool. What's up, Neil? What's up, DL? So we're gonna do some foraging tonight. I gotta get some stuff good. Yeah, man. And you're Elijah, you're in Texas too, right? So you know how hot it is around here. So I've got to get some stock kind of pre-formed for a knife that I'm going to make tomorrow. So I'm going to make a knife that I haven't really seen. It's a blacksmith knife, but I'm doing it kind of like how Lynn Ray does it, and it's going to be an X-ray style, but I'm doing a Quaken. So it's going to be slightly different than what people typically see. I'm going to go ahead and bring y'all over here. So, and I'm going to do an integral. So this is all going to be integral bolstered. So it's going to be nice and wide. And it's going to be, of course, like how he does his. There's going to be a pin where this handle comes around. It comes underneath the actual integral bolster area. I'm going to have that pinned into place. I'm going to be using part of a railroad tack. And I've got to go ahead and get that piece of steel ready so that I can actually do the integral part. So the cool thing about the whole integral bolster knives that I do, you know, a lot of the stuff is already a coil. It's already something that's round. Well, that's a hodgepodge of different shapes. So I'm going to get it down to the 1-inch size that I need to get ready for that bolster area so that I can then forge out the tail and everything. And what I mean by how Lynn Ray does his X-ray knives, instead of your normal blacksmith knife having that thin tail that comes around, and it's typically the thickness of the stock that you're working with, because this is an integral bolster where that comes around, it's actually going to be flat. So that tang is going to be, or that tail is going to be as wide as the bolster. So where that wraps around, it's going to be about half an inch or maybe a little bit wider. So it's going to be a little bit different than what you see typical blacksmith knives. And I'm forcing myself to do a Quaken where I'm not drawing a heel down. That has its own issues. So whenever you're trying to taper from a bolster down into an area, that steel's got to go somewhere. Well, it's easier to pull it down. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and bring y'all back over here to where the anvil is going to be. So whenever you have an integral bolster knife, kind of like this right here, whenever you go through and you forge this area, it's real easy to get this area down here because you're thinning all this material out. Well, it's easy to get it to go this way if you just pull it down. Well, on this one, I've got to keep it even with the bolster. So it's going to be a little bit different. I was going to do something kind of like this with the blacksmith knife, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. I need to get this piece of steel in here. Like I said, I need to take this piece that's all deformed and forge it into something that's more uniform and forge it from This is about an inch and a quarter, almost an inch and a half at the widest point. Got to forge that down to 1 inch. And we're actually going to be using Elijah's hammer to do that. And I talked to him about getting a 3 1/4 pound hammer. I want that. I saw him using it in his video. So I got that in the fire. Let it start heating up while we're doing this. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is kind of find this hammer. That right there is the hammer that I'm going to be using. This is the 5 pound one that I got from Elijah at Fire Creek Forge right there. So one of the projects that we're going to be working on, of course, is that blacksmith Quaken knife. I haven't seen anybody forge one of them. I haven't seen anybody do what I'm planning on doing. So we're going to see how that goes. But with the different challenges that we have, the YouTube challenges, the next challenge that we're thinking about doing is you're going to have the Viking challenge. Of course, we had a vote and all that stuff. We got a Viking challenge. We got a post-apocalyptic challenge where you just use reused materials to make a build, and then you have like a sci-fi one. The one that's kind of winning right now is the Viking challenge, and I haven't decided whether I want to make a sword or whether I want to make like a axe or a hatchet, or if I want to do both of those. I don't know. I'm going to know what the challenge is going to be pretty early, so I'm thinking about kind of getting stuff together and getting designs ready to be able to go ahead and do that pretty quick. This one, if you remember, of course, the one that's right here, I made that in the last like 2 weeks of the last challenge, and I don't want to do that on this one. If you remember this build, I want to put as much work as what went into this one. So I want to put that much work into this Viking challenge, where I did all the file work, did all the etching, did all the craziness to make the dragon scales actually stand out, all the file work inside there. I want to do this much work on that next build so that it stands out, it's crazy, it's unreal. I'm going to antique the hell out of it. I'm going to do runes on it. I'm going to do a lot of cool stuff with that particular challenge. But I wanted to put this much work into that particular build. So that's what I'm going to do. But what do y'all think? What challenge do y'all think would actually be more fun? You know me. Originally, I was like, man, I want to do a post-apocalyptic one. I want to take some leaf spring material and some crazy stuff, put it all together and make an absolute unreal thing. But I think the Viking challenge is going to be pretty cool if we end up going that direction. And I think a lot of the guys would do absolutely awesome within that. I wish that Elijah from Fire Creek Forge would actually join the challenges. I think he would be a good, contender on there. But I just, there's a lot of crazy builds. There's a lot of different things that people do, and I want people to be part of that. And I can't tell you how awesome it is, again, to have the forge out here and this fan and everything. Like, it is way better temperature-wise. Oh yeah, I also put up shelves. I did shelves there. I did shelves here, so that I could actually take a lot of the stuff from the other shop and start getting it into this shop. I've got to put a lot of stuff on these shelves. I got to empty that shop so that I can actually take all the sheetrock down. Disney themed? Oh yeah, that would be awesome. There's a lot of things I could say about that, but I probably won't do that. I know, man, like, any of the ones that are historically inspired are absolutely awesome. I love that particular part of these. It's so cool. And but with the other shed or the other shop, I got to get that emptied out so I can end up doing the insulation and re-sheetrocking it, getting it all ready for all the other stuff. I've got to end up putting a door and the wall over here that has like my belts and all my other stuff on it. I got to get the doorway put in that so that I can go from this shop to the other shop without having to go through the other door, the other door, and all that. I want to get it all consolidated, but still separate because a lot of the dust happens in here. Not as much now because I can actually pull the workbench that has all the dust creating stuff outside if I want to. I can go out there, grind out there, do all of that. But we'll see how it goes. I wonder how long that piece of steel is going to take to warm up. That thing is a big chunk. I like working with big pieces of steel. I know a lot of people think, man, you need a press, man, you need a power hammer. Every single time they see me forge something by hand out of like a huge piece of leaf spring or a big coil or whatever. But, okay, I didn't read that whenever I started saying that. I will be building a press. That will be happening hopefully this fall. I've been talking to a few people that have built theirs, and I'm kind of picking their brains for what things I need to go ahead and collect. But well, one of the reasons why I've been focusing so much on things like integrals and things like forging some of these crazy knives and forging bigger things like swords and stuff like that by hand is, you know, a lot of people see me forge, and a lot of people think, man, he could forge all kinds of different things, a lot of hammer control, stuff like that. But a lot of that's because I forced myself to forge ridiculous pieces of steel into ridiculous shapes. You know, trying to get used to what the hammers do, what parts of the anvil do what, and get used to hammer control. Being able to do all of those projects, it's real nice to force yourself to forge that much material because you get so much time behind the hammer and at the anvil by forging something that long. You know, doing a forging session that's 4 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, and repeating that over days and weeks and doing that stuff just to get used to what your hammer does. I can planish with my 5-pound hammer at this point. I don't have to use a small lightweight hammer. I'm so comfortable with my hammer control because of what I've been doing and practicing that you can planish with anything nowadays. Once you get used to the whole entire process of what you're doing and what your arm's going to do, rebound, all that stuff, what temperature you need your steel whenever planishing, different things like that. It makes their life a lot easier. You need a striker, invite your neighbor for a beer. Man, one of the things that I'm ready for is my 13-year-old to start doing that. You know, it's going to be his job to start, you know, getting in here and actually doing that process. He's my size, might as well help me. If it ends up being a Viking challenge, you should do a cool sword. Agree, Elijah. I think Elijah should do it as well. You know, especially if you look at a lot of the profiles that Elijah does on his channel, that fits like his aesthetic and stuff like that. And I think he'd do great in that challenge. Jason, you know, we've only been doing this for about 13 minutes, so you're not too late. And welcome from the UK. I think this is, yep, we're hot enough. Okay, so again, my goal for this is to get this kind of preformed. I've got my 1-inch measurement drawn on my anvil here so that I can go ahead and just check easily against this for the piece of steel. Go ahead and get it out. So we're just trying to get the area that's going to be the bolster and the area that's going to be the tang into that size. Go ahead and get it square. Like I said, this is a railroad tech that we ended up forging. I'm going to show you what this looks like when it's not in this profile. Give me 1 second. So I've got a few of them. So these typically look like this. So I took a section of this, and on one of my knives I made a bolster with it. Yeah, should be about 1080. It actually, whenever you heat treat it just like 1080, and this thing gets a silky smooth texture on the inside of it. The grain structure, silky smooth, and it gets nice and hard. So you just same heat treat process as 1080, and a lot of these you can find them. You're not supposed to go to railroad tracks and take the spikes and take the clips and take all that stuff. You can get in trouble. Railroad Commission has a fit whenever people take stuff like that. So if you find it, great. If someone gives it to you, even better. I was given like 20 of those, and that's what I end up using. What's up? My wife's out here. Came to say hi. Huh? She's just hanging out. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're able to get your forge outside of your shop, man, like it is a huge difference. Now, of course, it's not super hot, so it's also not that bad out here for whenever it comes to the actual like temperature and stuff like that. It's cooled down quite a bit, but even with me out here in this shirt, it's really not bad. What's up, Jason? So, again, the whole point behind what we're doing right now, we're just in the shop, forging, getting stuff kind of preformed, ready for the stuff that we're going to be doing tomorrow, and getting it forged down, getting it the right size so that whenever I start drawing the tang out, or you can call it the tang, the rat tail, everything's going to be pretty easy flowing into the bolster. Now, if you've ever watched Lynn Ray forge one of these X-ray knives or these blacksmith knives, you'll know that he does them slightly different than what how we typically forge them. So typically, whenever we go in to forge a knife, a lot of people forge in the tip and forge the blade and then start forging the handle profile. It's kind of the reverse of that. You forge all your material for your tail, get all that forged out, and then you forge the blade. So it's kind of reversed from what a lot of people do. And you have some people that do all kinds of different ways whenever they're forging. It's all up to you. But for me, this video for this blacksmith knife should be going out on Tuesday. That's the goal there. Minnesota, need my forge inside just to stay warm. What's the temperature in Minnesota right now? Is it cooling down pretty much over there already? What y'all have, like a 3-week summer? There's still people getting snow in like June in areas like that. It's over here burning hot for us. All I'm really focused on whenever I'm forging this is just the area that's going to be the tang. I'm not super worried about this area right here. That's not going to be the tip or anything like that. The tip's actually going to be over here. I'm more interested in getting the area that's going to be the tail nice and even and uniform. Yeah, and because we're moving a lot of material, you only want to work it when it's hot. You know, I'll work some slightly cool whenever I'm planishing, but because we're really trying to squish and move, as soon as it starts losing that heat, stop forging it. It's not going to do you any good on a piece of steel that big. And like I said, that was between 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches by about 3/4 inch. So it's a big piece of steel. It's been a while since I built my press, but I can help. I know. I'm buying the book on. Okay, James Batson. I will buy that book. So the big thing for me is just making sure that I do it the right way so that I don't end up hurting myself, for one, because a lot of people at 20-ton press, things like that, some of that stuff goes places. It's going to screw you up. But I also want to make sure that whenever I build it, that the two planes where the dies sit, to where it actually moves up and down super even. Because you see some of them and they go like this as they're coming down, and then whenever they press, they kiss each other, and they kind of even out. I want to build one to where they actually move real even, so that it just does its job right. And then I can't wait to just start just having fun, man. Doing those ball bearing billets that you do, I want to do that stuff so bad. I want to do so many different Damascus stuff, but doing canister Damascus by hand is a nightmare. I've done I've done 2 canisters by hand, and not being able to get it to forge from all the sides at once. You know how you use your 245s and you press it and you're basically pressing from all sides? Man, you have to have that. If you don't have that, it just turns into a nightmare, a mess. It's a pain in the butt. It just sucks. And if I was in engineering guidelines, see, stuff like that. That's what I really want to make sure. And dude, what is the temperature? I know you were talking about Minnesota. So no snow, but is it cool there? We had a couple of days. What was it like last week? A couple weeks ago?
Like 72.
Yeah, where it was like 70 degrees. We had one day where it was 69 degrees outside. That was beautiful. I was working during that. That's when you want to go out to the shop and you want to forge. You get some times when it's in the 60s, dang, man, you could do a lot of work whenever it's that temperature. Okay, go with the board. Okay, so our area towards the tip here is that 1 inch. So I just need to bring it down even with that. And then I need to compress it a little bit. And I need to start forging on the actual corners, because you kind of want to bevel those so they're not sharp. Because what ends up happening whenever you start compressing this, what it wants to do is it wants to mushroom and make the center area. It kind of wants to keep that thin and widen the actual top and bottom, so it starts mushrooming. And that's not what I'm going for on my profile. I've done that on this one on purpose, but you can see what I'm talking about. Now on this one, of course, I rounded this, and I wanted to do that on purpose. I actually ended up forging this a little bit thinner in the center, but it's one of those things where it'll start mushrooming like that. But I want to go ahead and force those corners in, because I want that bolster area to be almost an oval when it's all said and done. And you got to start that process now so that it ends up how you want it. See here. See you, Elijah. Thanks for coming over here and hanging out with us. So 51 degrees, getting pretty chilly. Dude, 30s? Yeah, man, that would be absolutely awesome. I would deal with 30s. But it's supposed to snow next week where you're at. It's supposed to be in like the 90s next week here. Not super looking forward to that. Now, I will tell you again, the reason why I've been working with such big chunks of steel lately and doing all the integral bolsters is getting used to again, what your hammer does, but also getting used to forging from thick masses down into thin masses and then making those super uniform. So like whenever I did the sword here, of course, this was nowhere near, what the steel looked like whenever I started forging, but I forged this completely to profile, and being able to get a uniform thickness throughout your whole entire blade is a huge thing to me. And then also forge in your tip area, but this is all forged here. And I even did a texture on both sides of the flats there. But still, being able to do that and have a nice, uniform, straight blade, uniform thickness throughout the whole entire thing. And this steel was, it was a full-blown leaf spring. It didn't look like this at all. But being able to compress it, move it, bend it everywhere, do all that stuff, and then end up being able to more or less planish it to be a similar thickness throughout the whole entire blade has been something that I've really wanted to work on. So I've been forcing myself to forge pretty big pieces of steel. Again, get used to the hammer blows, build muscle memory, build the muscle to be able to forge for as long as I want to forge, and not get cramps, not get some tennis elbow or something like that. Whenever I first started doing this, my body was not used to the abuse of forging for a long time. And whenever I first started, I was using a 2 1/4 pound rounding hammer. And going from a 2 1/4 pound to a 5 pound, that builds up the muscles that you need to be able to do this for a long period of time. And then going and forging with this for a while, it just makes it to where you pull the steel out, you start forging, and you don't have all that fatigue. Whenever I first started doing it, like I said, I would have moments where I'd get muscle spasms in my elbow here, where my forearm muscle and my bicep would almost want to just squeeze together involuntarily, and I didn't like that. So again, forcing myself to forge all of this has been crazy. What's up, Jeff? And what's up, Jeff? For some reason, guys have been giving me mystery steel lately. How should I test to see if it's hardenable? The easiest way to test to see if it's hardenable is go ahead and do a test quench. And what I typically do, if I have mystery steel, I treat that steel like 1080 first. So now, if it's mystery steel that looks like tool steel, you can treat it like tool steel first if you want to. But one of the easiest ways to do it right off the bat, heat it up, bring it up to between 1475 and 1525, quench it in AAA, Parks AAA, see how it looks, do grain refinement cycles if you feel like if you want to be able to make sure it's as smooth as possible on the inside. But just go ahead, do a heat treat process just like it's 1080 and see how it turns out. And if you could do one 1080, you could do, or one like 1080 and one like tool steel. So if you want to do like a Parks 50 quench, or you want to do a water quench on it, things like that, you can go ahead and try that and just see how it works. I would forge it to about, if it's a random piece of steel, I'd forge it to where it was about 3/16 of an inch thick, and then I would snap test it. The reason why I say 3/16 of an inch is that way it's wide enough to where you can easily see the grain structure. If you forge it down to like 1/8 of an inch or thinner than that, you're gonna have to use like a magnifying glass to be able to really see what the grain structure looks like. But if you forge it down to 3/16, it's still easily snappable, but you can actually see what the grain structure looks like. But for me, whenever I first started doing it with all the mystery steel, the 5160s and all that stuff, that's what I did. Did a lot of snap tests. I did a whole entire thing where I tried, I think I did a whole video on it, where I quenched at all the way from 1425 all the way up to 1600 degrees with 5160 to figure out what I liked with what oil I was quenching in, which was peanut oil. And 1525 is what has done the best with that particular steel before quenching. Okay, we need to bring the rest of this down to that thickness. we need steel-wise. Okay, come down on the corners a little bit. Put it back in. So we're at the 1 inch that we want for that tang area. We can go ahead and just start working on the shoulders of it. So just the corners, start trying to round that down just a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and let that be from there so that tomorrow I can go ahead and start bringing out that tail for that blacksmith knife. Now, one of the things that I haven't seen, and it just might not be on Google, it just might not be on YouTube, but I haven't seen an integral bolstered blacksmith knife. And what I mean by that is the wider bolster that then necks down into the blade. I see Lynn do his where the rat tail steps down into the ricasso, but the ricasso is the same thickness as the spine of the actual blade. I'm doing it to where my tail is about as wide as my finger, so about not 3/4. We'll do about 1/2 inch wide, and 1/2 inch to 5/8 wide, and the bolster is going to be the same thickness as that, and then it's going to step down into the blade. So I haven't seen it on Google. I searched high and low on Google to see if somebody's done this. I searched on YouTube. Nobody's done it. So do you always use peanut oil at Parks 50 and AAA? So for 5160, I use peanut oil. Could I use AAA? Yep. Could I use Parks 50? Mm-hmm. I've got buckets of that stuff because there's certain blades that I like quenching in those. If I'm using, I could quench 8670 in that if I wanted to, but for me, if I'm gonna do like 80 CRV2, if I'm gonna do 26 C3, I'm gonna do 15 and 20. If I'm gonna do like a 1095, stuff like that, I'm not gonna use peanut oil to quench those. I just use the peanut oil for my 5160 builds. So like this right here, I'm actually gonna use, I'm probably gonna use Parks 50 on this particular thing. And I could use AAA because, like I said, I got a bucket of that. But I think I'm going to try it out with, I don't know. We're up in the air on that. Whenever I actually quench it, I'll then decide, yep, this is the moment I'm going to use AAA, or this is the moment I'm going to use 50. You'll see a lot of people, if you go onto forums, you'll see people who do quenching 5160 and all kinds of stills, 80 CRV2, 10 series stills in Parks 50. They just quench everything in Parks 50. Then you got some people that just quench everything in AAA. And then you got some people that quench everything in peanut oil or canola oil. So it kind of depends on what the people want to do. For me, peanut oil for my 5160, and then I use Parks 50 and AAA for all of my quote-unquote known steels, ones that I bought from people to actually make knives. They're actual knife steel that's virgin steel. I typically use Parks 50 or AAA for those particular builds. Okay, let's go ahead and get this back out. It's crazy how much quieter it is without the forge being actually in the shop. because right now I'm not trying to move a bunch of steel, I can work with it just a hair cool. Now here's the crazy thing with the camera. You know, that's going to look cooler than it is. If I turn a light off, you can actually see that the heat's still fully through it. But lighting plays with the camera and all that stuff in weird ways. So, because right now, all I'm trying to do is take the corner of this and start rounding it. I don't need it to be super hot, because what's going to happen is if it's super hot, it's going to want to try and move a lot more material. But all I'm trying to do is just slightly start rounding the top and the bottom, you know, kind of like if you were going to planish, but it still needs to be hotter than if you're going to planish. Whenever I'm planishing, the steel is like a dull red to gray. If I'm planishing, because all I'm trying to do is smooth, the hotter you have the steel, the more, we'll call it damage, that your hammer does to the finish of the steel that you're working with. So the hotter it is, the more it moves. So even a slight hammer blow could put a big dent in it. So we're not wanting to put big dents in this right now. We already forged it down to the thickness that we wanted it. So now we're just trying to get it, brought it in, or bring it in just a little bit, start rounding things and stuff like that. So I can actually probably go ahead and grab it. So I'll be able to work with it faster now. I don't have to worry about it heating up as much. But again, we're primarily just focusing on rounding the edges. So whenever you see me do this in the actual video, you'll see that I only need about this much of the actual material to make the whole entire handle. I don't need a whole bunch. And I won't be using this whole entire section for the blade. That right there, if I was to forge this, just this section into a blade, it would be twice as long as that. If I was to forge this section from here down to here, down into a blade like this, it would be ridiculous. I could probably forge out of this piece of steel, I could probably forge a wakizashi. If you're trying to figure out exactly how much I could take, because think about this. Whenever I go to forge this down, how thick this is, I would go to a third of this thickness for the blade. So if this is overall, it's 6.5 inches right now, okay? 6.5 inches. So we would have something in the mid-20s, 20 inches long. If I was to forge that into a blade that was the same thickness all the way down, this would be a big piece, a big knife. And I'm not looking for a 15-inch long blade. The actual blade on this is going to be, let's see, grab one of these handy dandy rulers. So the actual cutting edge on the knife that I'm going to start forging tomorrow is going to be 6 inches. So I probably only need about 2 inches of that blade area, or the 2 inches of steel. So I'll be able to cut off maybe 2 inches from that, and then I'll be able to forge the point down, forge it all the way out into the blade, and then go from there. But what I'm probably going to end up doing is taking a little bit off the end of that, but then I'm going to end up forging it down to a uniform thickness, and then I'll probably cut off a section and then end up forging that into a smaller knife later. So I don't know if I'm going to hot cut it. I'll probably hot cut it, and that way we have something to work with. later. I love working with pieces that I've used. So that piece of railroad tack or track tack, whatever you want to call it, that piece right there, I've used several pieces because what that is right there is this section right here. So from here to here, that's what that is right there. I used this section for a bolster for a really big buoy. I forged this section right here into another knife off the channel. And so I've used this section and I've used this section off of it. What I'm working with right now and forging was from here to here. I took and I forged that flat, and now we're just pre-forming it for the next build. I got to get back to work. Really enjoy your lives. Thank you for being here, Bob. What is the PSI? The forge is going. So I've got a 30 PSI regulator on there, and I would say it's probably going at about 15 right now because, of course, I've got two regulators. I've got the regulator that's right off the bottle, and then I've got two more that are on the end of the burners. So I've got two of those. And I know that the one at the bottle is running about 15 PSI, and I've got the nozzles turned, they go 3 full rotations, and I've got them at about 1 rotation open. And so it's probably running about 10 to 13 PSI right now. It's not screaming right now. You can see it's doing its job, but it's not like throwing a huge flame out. And with this, I've got the back actually covered. So I've got fire breaks on the actual back of it, and it's not really blowing a ton of flame out or anything like that. I don't tend to run a really high PSI. What's going to be nice is whenever I do my Apollo forge, some of those things with the ribbon burners are running like 3 PSI. Just imagine how much propane you save. Imagine how much propane you could save if you're running 3 PSI. That would be absolutely awesome. Go ahead and oval this just a little bit. Just remember, if you're going to try and oval something, or you're going to try and make something that has a uniform curve to it, get your hammer in from both sides. You don't want to be sitting there hammering on one side on the ground. You don't want to be sitting there hammering on one side because, let me see if I can get this without, yes. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a half circle on one side and a flat spot on the other side. So when you're trying to make a uniform profile on anything, let's say you're trying to neck something down into your ricasso area, or you're trying to forge bevels into something, you want to forge from both sides so that you don't end up having a chisel. Because if you just forge from one side, you're going to have your angle on this side. The other side's going to be flat because that's where you had the anvil. The only way that you would counteract that is if you were to take your steel. If you took your steel and instead of forging it flat and hitting here to do your bevel, if you take this and you angle it like that, what'll end up happening is the anvil will start beveling this side and your hammer will start beveling this side. So you could actually take and do both sides. I would still flip it here and there just to make sure it's good, but you can't actually do that. But a lot of us, whenever we come down and we're forging this, we got the steel flat and I tend to use my round side of my hammer to start my bevels. And we come in from the side here, and we're forging a chisel, basically. So then we need to flip it, do the same process, so that it centers that blade back down. And then when you start planishing, I tend to use a light hammer whenever I'm planishing. You know, I'll grab something a little bit lighter, and I'll come in and I'll correct it by putting the blade, putting the actual bevels on. Let's say I had my blade right here, and my edge was slightly over here, just in the area near the ricasso. My edge was slightly over that way. So it might be easier if I do this. So this right here. So let's say I forged my bevels in here, and my bevel was slightly over to one side. All I would need to do, let's say we're right here, and the bevel is closer towards this side of the ricasso. It's closer towards the bottom. All I got to do is take and flip this, okay? So now the bevel is right here. Put it on the edge of the anvil, and I hammer here. I hammer on the ricasso. And what it'll do is it'll center that area, that bevel in your cutting edge, it'll center it back into your ricasso. So to whichever side it is, so if it's further down this way, put that section on the anvil, and forge the other side, and it will move it back up. If you moved it too far, flip it over, put it on there, hang the ricasso off, tap the ricasso. And what that'll do is that'll center your edge inside your ricasso. I do that a lot whenever I'm working with integral bolster knives, and I want to take these and I want to center them inside the integral bolster area. If it is slightly this way, again, I put it on that. I lay it on the side that's it's off. If it was over here, I would lay it on this side, and I would tap the bolster area. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull that cutting edge up towards the center. Hopefully that's explained. We'll see. If that wasn't good enough explanation, you can always tell me. Oh. All right. So go ahead and do a little bit more forging. All right. I'll pull it down just a little bit more. Okay. I brought it down a little bit thinner just because as I start ovaling it, it made it a little bit wider. So I'm making it a little bit thinner to compensate for me ovaling it. Because as I oval it, by default, it's going to start, you know, you have a square, you take and you oval it. Yeah. A square? And you oval it, it automatically makes those sides, these two pieces, whiter. So, thinking about that. Let's see here. I have two of those metal rivet brackets. Yeah. So, if you watch, I think Jason Knight had one of his like mystery steel knives that he did, and he took two of those railroad tack things, the spring clip. It's called a railroad spring clip. He took two of those, forged them out, and actually made a wakizashi out of one of them. So it was one of his like mystery steel build videos where he did like a 3-part build, and he ended up making, I think it was a wakizashi out of it, that was like 20 something inches long, and I think it was like 1/4 of an inch thick. Of course, it's pretty easy whenever you have a piece of steel this long to do that. I mean, you can make something huge. I've seen people take these and make them into full-length katanas. So that you can do some crazy stuff, and they actually heat treat really easy. See here, I made a forge using an electric blower. It runs, yeah. A lot of the forced air like forges, especially ones that are ribbon burner ones, man, you can run pretty low psi because you have that added air automatically makes the flame hotter, and so yeah, absolutely, man, you can run real low psi on forced air forges. Okay, I'm going to narrow this down just a little bit more. I think it's about 3/4 of an inch. Then come down about another 1/8 of an inch, and then I can be good from there. Yeah, come down about another 1/8 of an inch, and then I'll be good to go ahead and round that. So, what projects are y'all working on right now? I know y'all got to be working on something. It's I've always got some project going. Forge up to a 500-gallon tank outside. So I would love to do that, but being in the middle of a neighborhood, trying to get like a fill truck here is not super easy. They'd have to come down my alley, and my alley is not super wide. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is going up to a 100-gallon, and kind of want to do that. I don't know 100% yet which one I'm going to go with, but I am going to go with something pretty big because I can always use a dolly and load it into the back of my truck. You know, if some of y'all don't know, I work at a RV dealership, and we have our own propane fill station, and I'm, you know, propane certified, all that, the whole blue card thing and everything. In Texas, you go through the Railroad Commission, got to take all the tests and do all that stuff to be able to work on propane, like stoves, propane refrigerators, all kinds of propane stuff, run propane lines, refill tanks, do all that stuff. And so I just fill my own propane on site. So sheaths, doing pancake, draw stop. So are you doing leather, or are you doing Kydex with your sheaths? So working on a chef's knife with my sister, and that's cool. I work on a lot of knives for myself. So I sell them too, of course. Got the website. I post them on there. Sell a lot of the builds. Most of the builds that I sell on the website, though, are like the YouTube builds. So I get a lot of people that ask if they can buy them, so I just post them for sale on the website. And then, of course, I sell like shirts and mugs and things like that on there, but primarily sell the knives on there. I say that, I actually sell a lot of shirts. Leather sheaths, yep. So whenever you're saying cross draw style, do they have clips, or do you have belt loops cut into the sheath? So if it's cross draw, is it like at a 45 or at an angle, or is it straight out like a scout carry? So starting a new chef knife at 01 for my parents for Christmas gift. Only made one knife before. It was a Quaken. Yeah, Quakens from Nicholson Falls are awesome. Finished up a Kukri this morning. 10-inch 80 CRV2 blade. Nice. So whenever I did my sheath for my kukri that I did, what I ended up doing was I left the top open because I did like a harpoon. If y'all remember the kukri that I did that had the exposed copper liners towards the front of the handle scales, that had that like turquoise blue set of handle scales on it. What I did with that was I left the top of the sheath open, and then I ended up putting a strap over it so that it pinched the sheath. So that way that the kukri can go down blade first in, and it made it real easy to be able to pull out and put back in. And then I just ran a strap over it with a little clip. Some practices, harness. He wants me to forge a Ganutin. Yeah. Gonna start that soon. That's what you do right there. Use your son for the extra work. Making a new one for myself because the guy in Walmart refused to let me leave until I sold him my EDC. Man, I've had that happen. Wasn't in real good shape. Hey, but you know what? Your knife in not real good shape was probably better than all the knives that were in Walmart. Loops at a shallow angle. Got some shorts. Yeah, see that's cool. I'm gonna go check those out. So I haven't done a ton of leather. I've done a little bit of leather work, but I still got plenty of work to do to perfect that particular craft. Plenty of work to do to protect that particular, or to, advance my leather working skills. So it started kind of getting a little rhombus on me, so right now I'm unrhombusing it. So that we're square again, so on this next heat, we don't end up having a weird profile. So, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the area that I just forged. So on the next heat, whenever I forge that area again, it'll start unrhombusing it. It'll flatten it back out so that the corners are nice and square. One of the things that I thought about investing in was one of those like water tanks to put my propane bottles in to actually keep them from frosting over. I try and tell people about that whenever you're using a smaller tank. It's hard for people to wrap their head around the fact that it could be 130 degrees in my shop and my tank will still frost over at the bottom. Yeah, it's like an aerosol can or like compressed air. You start holding it down, that bottom starts freezing. The same exact thing. But I thought about doing that to keep it a little bit warm longer because as your bottom starts cooling, you decrease the amount of pressure that your propane kicks out. The efficiency of it goes down. So Cleaver and Integral hunting knife, and always making chef's knife. Yep. I'm not the best at leather, but other knife makers really seem. Yeah, see, that's the same thing for me. Like, I don't think I'm that good, but I'm really picky. So I like to make sure that my stitching is real even between both sides. So typically whenever I stitch up a sheath, the stitching tends to line up real well and real even. So people like that, but whenever I look at the sheath, I'm looking at all the stuff that I think went wrong during the sheath making process, So they think that looks cool, and I'm looking at it going, yeah, but that's wrong, and this is wrong, and this is, I cut this a little short here, I did this thing wrong, and they're looking at it going, damn, that's awesome. Use an electric blanket wrapped around your bottle. I thought about that too, because they've got a bunch of different things that you can do. And I know that whenever I get a bigger bottle, because the larger the bottle, the less of it doesn't freeze up as fast. You know, if you had a 100-gallon bottle, you really wouldn't have to worry about it. If you have one of those big 500-gallon tanks outside in your pasture, you don't have to worry about that thing freezing over either, because you have a lot of propane. All right. We're gonna hear that motorcycle in the background. It's probably one of my friends doing like 1 billion miles an hour down the road. There we go. Now we're back in square. See where we're at now. About there. Now I'm just going to narrow it out just a little bit, thickness wise, and take that down. So right now we're at about 5/8, and I want it to be right at about 1/2 inch. Might as well just leave this on here. I want it to be about 1/2 inch wide, so I'll bring it down about that. Now, I know that some of this stuff is interesting, some of it's not, but I have a lot of people that ask me about doing, hammer-ins and actually coming and learning how to forge and do stuff like that. Eventually, I will do things like that, but I'll tell you, because what they tell me is they want to get used to forging how I forge and getting confidence and all that stuff. I'll tell you right now that the only reason why I'm able to be as confident in forging like I am now is I kind of got to cheat and learn how to forge a little bit faster than you typically could. And the reason behind that is every single time I forge something that's crazy or whatever, I film myself the whole entire time. So all the forging, all that stuff, and then I go and I edit that video for hours. So I get to watch myself forge for hours. So it's just like a sports analogy would be game day footage. So being able to watch your previous game and figure out what you did right, what you did wrong, and be able to correct it for the next game. I get to watch myself for hours forging. So I get to see things that I did slightly wrong, things that I did right, so I can continue doing the right thing, but change the wrong thing. Maybe I'm holding my hammer a little weird. Maybe I was forging for a little bit too long. Maybe I, was just trying to do one particular thing, but it was screwing up because I was at a wrong part of the anvil. So I was at an area that was really sharp, and I needed to be at an area that was slightly more round so that I could counteract a particular forging step a little bit easier. So I get to watch myself forge a lot, hundreds of hours. I've watched myself forge, and it helped me learn how to do this a lot faster. Now, one of the things that I did was I forced myself to make knife after knife, or I forced myself to forge knife after knife after knife after knife after knife, do all this stuff, and then force myself to watch myself do it. I wouldn't suggest going out and getting a camera and watching yourself forge the entire time, because hardly anybody has the time to watch themselves do that. You could just go out and forge. But the nice thing about going to a hammer-in, or nice thing going to someone's shop and forging with them, is they can tell you whenever you're swinging, they can tell you, okay, you see yourself doing this, you need to do this. You see yourself going like this, you need to do this. This is what this hammer does. This is how you do this. And you get to see that in the process. They get to watch you and help change what you're doing. So I get to watch myself and then tell myself, hey, I'm going to do this slightly different next time. I'm going to do this thing slightly different next time. And I get to watch myself do that for hours. All right, let's grab this. Flatten it out just a little bit more. Take it down to about 1/2 inch. Okay, looking pretty good. Okay, and we're good. So that's where I want it to be thickness-wise and width. So that as I start this tomorrow, what I'm going to end up doing, we'll grab this as a pointer. So what we're going to end up doing, or I start forging this tomorrow, I'll only need about from here to here to make that handle the way that I want to make it. So what I'm going to end up doing is I will forge this whole entire area really flat and long. It'll stay this thickness, but I'm going to extend this area to about 8.5 inches. So I'm going to have about a tail that's 8.5 inches long, and that will end up folding around on itself and coming in and then getting pinned at the bottom of the bolster area. And just in case y'all didn't get a chance to see it, now here's a step that I'm going to tell you about. So I just got done forging on that. So in between now and what I'm going to do tomorrow, it's going to go in the forge and it's going to do an annealing process. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to bring it up to 1600 degrees and let it cool inside the forge. I'm going to bring the forge in here, sit it in here, shut off the forge, and I'm going to let it cool inside there. So it's an annealing step. If I forge one day and I'm going to be forging the next day, I do an annealing phase before I start the next day. Basically, it relaxes the steel, get it nice and comfy again, and then I'll go ahead and heat it up and start forging it again the next day. But that way I don't risk having cracks or anything like that develop. I've had bad stuff happen in the past where you develop little cracks and things like that, and you can't fight those back into not being cracked. It just sucks. So if I'm going to be forging the next day, goes into forge, annealing step, ready for the next day, and we're good. So with this right here, I'm going to take this phone off real quick and I'm going to try and show y'all again. Okay, let's turn you around. This is what that knife's going to be. I've also got one of these right here in the works. One of these blacksmith knives is going to be an integral bolt into it. Piece of steel is going to turn into this step up right here, another step up, come back under the bolster, and then I'm going to end up hammering and pinning a pin through this. So I'm going to drill a hole through the bottom of this up into the bolster, and then I'm going to pin a pin into that area. I'm going to do a brass pin so it actually stands out. So you'll actually see it. And I'm going to leave it domed. I'm not going to that blade and super straight. But we're going to forge that down just like that. It's pinging and bouncing in between my my Wi-Fi. It would be nice if what's going to end up happening with that is it's going to end up coming around, and then, like I said, that blade area is going to be the same height as the actual bolster. It's going to be a little interesting forging that and keep it from I'm going to have to forge the material and move it out as opposed to up and down. So it's going to be a lot of using the straight peen to move the material out and then correcting it and squaring it back up to the actual bolster. Now again, I'm primarily going to be working on this for tomorrow and see if I can get it all forged out and then kind of go from there. It's going to be a lot of forging, but it's going to be a blast. And of course, we'll end up making a video for it and all that. But there we go. Well, hello, Matt. How have you been, Matt? First, I've talked to you a couple of times today. Got to know this. Matt's actually my my admin guy on my TRE workshop page. So he, how late am I? Well, we are an hour and 12 minutes into this, and we're going to be going for another few minutes. Now, one of the things that I wanted to of course, I like to end these with like any questions y'all may have or anything like that. But whenever before we start doing the question thing, again, I have a lot of people that ask about, you know, coming and trying to forge and do stuff like that with me, and I will eventually do that. I'm still trying to get the shops set up, and if I ever do a shop that's outside of my home, then I will definitely be doing things like that. I'll have classes and stuff. The hard part for this, though, with me having classes is if you were going to go to a class and have somebody teach you how to do bladesmithing, it would almost make a ton of sense for you to go to a you know, a journey smith or a master smith, bladesmith, like somebody who's actually got the ABS stuff going for them and everything. Me, I don't have that. Will I eventually do those processes, do the journeyman, do the master? Eventually, yes, I will, but that's not a priority for me. The priority for me right now is getting better within my craft and doing all of the stuff that I have fun with. Will I eventually do that? Sure. Would me having that title bring me any extra clout? Yeah, probably. But it's not something that's necessary for me. You know, I enjoy the teaching aspect of this craft. I enjoy doing these things and actually having fun, showing y'all what I'm doing. And I prefer just to do that right now. Eventually, sure, I'll do it. But is it necessary for me to do it right now? No. Would y'all want, I mean, y'all know that I'm not a journeyman or that I've done any of those tests. Would y'all watch me any less? Probably not. Because y'all get to see me do all this stuff. Y'all get to see me have fun in here. And a lot of stuff is just me practicing, having a blast, and showing y'all what I've learned in the process so that maybe y'all can skip a few steps. And I enjoy doing this particular part of this as often as I do because there's not a whole bunch of YouTube channels that'll take the time to do this because this doesn't pay. And a lot of people want to make money off of this as a career, so they want to do the things that pay you a lot. And would I love to make a ton of money off this? Sure. But even if I don't, I'm going to continue to do it. But guys, do y'all have any questions for me before we end up calling this? I'm going to go ahead and get a drink real quick. I know we've been talking pretty much the whole entire time, so thank y'all for actually participating in the conversation and actually communicating with me during this. That makes these live streams so much more fun. Pink lemonade. It's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and close this forge off real quick. Hold on. Okay. Forge is closed off. Can you mix Parks 50 and AAA? Nope. And yes, you missed this. So Matt, doors are open. I got the fan blowing cool air in here and the hot air out. You can see now, got the forge shut off, turned off, and closed. So that can do that annealing step in there. Man, but I'll tell you right now, again, it's a game changer being able to have the doors open and the forge out there, and the fan blowing. If felt so much more comfortable. I'm not sweating or anything like that. And I'm wearing a thick shirt and pants. It's been amazing. Do not mix Parks 50 and AAA though. Those are two different speed oils, and Parks 50 is a faster one. AAA is a slower oil. You won't get any benefit from mixing them. It's very true. I want you guys taught me a lot. Everything I know from you and Dennis. We both appreciate that. And I was really happy that Dennis stuck with his Triple T Thursdays, because he's at a point right now. I think he just passed 300,000 subscribers, and he's got some really successful videos. So he could easily, kind of start trimming back on the education stuff and focus more on the big builds and make a lot of money off of those, and just do the fancy, builds where he's putting copper, silver, and gold and all kinds of things in there. He could easily just do those videos, but he's still doing the Triple T Thursdays and still trying to educate. And I really like the way he does his education with his Damascus, because he actually breaks them down with the little grids in the corner where he's showing you exactly what he's doing, and going from regular Damascus to crushed W's and all that stuff, doing all the cool little things that he does within his Damascus, and actually breaking that stuff down is absolutely awesome. And he's got an awesome education voice. And he's also a lot taller than y'all might think. So I'm like 5'10.5" to 6 foot on a good day, depending on how I slept. And he's like 3 inches taller than me. I look shorter in the videos. I get a lot of people that tell me that I'm taller than what I seem in the videos, because the way the camera angles are. But like this section of my roof right now is like 8 feet tall. I'm actually taller than what a lot of people think. Viking Challenge. I think the Viking Challenge is going to be a blast. I think that it's going to be something that I've already made a sax. I've made a sax sword. I've done those things. But the way that I'm going to do this one is going to be really, really cool. I'm going to be engraving some runes into it. I'm going to be doing some fun stuff with it. It's going to have a fuller cut into it. We don't know if it's going to be Viking or not, but it's like the Viking and the post-apocalyptic one are kind of battling right now. So we'll see what happens. And Dennis will let y'all know. I know the apocalyptic one, dude, I would absolutely crush that one, but I would love to do that. I was saying, imagine if I did, again, all of this stuff right here on apocalyptic challenge, actually going in and doing all that on something like that. That would be an absolute blast to put all that extra work into something like that. Look at the bone, the teeth, everything. Like, that would be an absolute blast on that particular challenge. But I've got some cool file work, and I've got some cool stuff that's going to be going into whatever we're going to be doing. And I'm going to force myself to put a ton of time into that build. It's going to be really, really cool. I'm not going to be making a knife. I'm going to be making a sword. And I might be making a battle hatchet thing. I don't know if they would call them hatchets or little axes or whatever, little bearded axe. I'm going to be making one of those too. Post this sheath on the shorts tomorrow. I'll check it out, Ian, for sure. It's the size of the man. It's how you swing the hammer. So, yes. And for me, again, if you want to get used to forging, you want to get better at it, get out to your shop and just start forging stuff. What I will tell you is this. I'm not a blacksmith. A lot of people will tell you to go through and forge all those leaves and petals and feathers and all this stuff with that, because forging those is going to really show you how to use different hammers and how to control your hammer. But if you're going to practice forging, you might as well just practice forging knives. That's what I did. I've forged a lot of them, and it has forced me to get better at knife making. I'm not gonna make leaves. I'm not, or leaves? Leaves. I'm not gonna make those because that's not me. That's not a fun thing to me. I'm gonna forge knives because knives are fun for me. And if I'm gonna spend all that time swinging a heavy hammer in a hot shop, I'm gonna be doing the thing that I really want to do, which is making knives. So it's a little bit more motivating whenever you actually start transitioning from forging a knife-shaped-ish object to actually forging a knife to profile. When you start doing that, and you get there, and you forge, and you finish your profile, and then all you gotta do is grind off like a 1/16 of an inch. Dang, that is like so gratifying that it's ridiculous. When's the next live? So it's guaranteed that y'all are gonna have a live every Saturday at 7. So by default, and it's of course 7 Texas time, just like today's was. No matter what, you will have a Saturday live stream. I did a poll, and everyone said that this time was pretty much perfect for everyone. And as of right now, it has been that way. We've actually done really well on the live streams with this particular time. Now, as we do the live streams, again, they're going to be more tailored towards a lot of different things. But I enjoy doing the forging process while I'm doing the live streams. But we'll have other things that we do too, like bevel grinding, profiling, trying to figure out how to do correct templates or think through the sizing of your handles, even all the way to the point to where we're talking about how you want to price your knives, how you should be able to make sure that you're able to do this and make enough money to be able to continue doing this, whether it's going to be as a hobby or as a knife maker, to be able to be successful within this and not go poor in the process of trying to make knives. So we're going to have a lot of different things that we're going to talk about as we go through, and eventually this will get really structured to where it'll be easy to follow and watch them and do all that stuff, especially whenever we get the other shop done, because I'm going to be sitting down in there and I'm going to do a few things like how some people do podcasts, like live stream podcasts, and they're able to pull up things on their screen, whether they're doing they're actually showing the screen on their computer. So whenever we start messing with things like knife print, when we start messing with things like me going and showing y'all a video that Dennis has done or a video that someone has done and explaining what they're doing in the process and slowing it down and talking about a few different things like that. We're going to have some cool live streams, and it's going to be pretty awesome because, again, it's like a podcast that you can actually participate in versus a podcast that you just have to watch me talk. I don't have a ton of news and things like that. So I don't want to do my podcast that way. And I also want to be able to transition from the shop to this shop. So between the shops, sitting down, coming in here, talking, all that stuff. We're going to have a lot of fun. Practice with railroad spikes because I got it for free. Absolutely perfect. Doing railroad spikes, that's a great thing to practice on because you're having to learn how to forge something that's a bigger piece of steel down into a blade. So you're forging it down to a certain thickness, and then you're having to either center it in the actual handle that is the handle of that would be the railroad spike. So you're having to learn how to do basically integral bolsters whenever you're doing railroad spike knives. You're forcing yourself to learn how to do integral bolsters. A lot of people don't think about that when they're making railroad spike knives, but you are making an integral bolster knife. It's just an integral handle as well. So if you practice on those, that's great. The reason why I suggest going through and doing the working with actual knife steel or even 5160 is being able to quench it and getting used to that process too. So I wanted to really learn that process, so I forged them, I did stock removal, I did whatever, but I did it all on steels that would be able to be quenched so that I could get my quench processes down with all the steels as well. Because even if you do a high carbon railroad spike knife, it's still going to be on the lower carbon end, so you'll only ever get like high 40s, low 50 Rockwell on it, which is not something that's going to hold a real good edge. But it's still great to work on those. I have a lot of friends that sell them at blade shows. I have to remind Don that it's Saturday. I was just talking about them today. Yep, you do have to tell him. Okay, I can tell him too. I'll text him. I didn't realize he didn't know that. I'll go back and watch from the beginning. That would be awesome. Thank you, JJ. Thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend. Jeff, you too. Guys, I think it's time to go ahead and wrap this son of a gun up. So be looking forward to the video. Y'all are actually getting a video tomorrow. You're going to get a video release tomorrow, and then you'll get the video release however far I get on the Integral Bolster Blacksmith Quaken. It's a long name, but however far I get on that video will release on Tuesday. And then if I've got to do a part 2, that video will release next Tuesday. Then, of course, it's coming up Saturday. We're going to have a live stream. I might throw in a random live stream this week. We'll see how it goes. But for right now, that's pretty much it. Guys, thank y'all again for participating in this and talking and communicating. Y'all make these live streams amazing. I really appreciate them. Thank you to the guys who are actually part of the member section. Jeff Jones, Matt, I really appreciate that. Think about joining that. I've got a few things that are going to be releasing in that particular section of this. You can actually join the channel and become a member or a VIP member and help the channel out if you want to. I appreciate that. Those guys are going to be getting a couple of things here very soon, which hopefully they'll like. But guys, y'all have an amazing day. All right, stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time. See y'all.